Alright, we're reviewing for the 9-week test. Solving each of these equations, we want to get the x by itself. Right now we have 4 times x equals negative 32. To get rid of multiplying by 4, divide by 4. And so we get x equal to negative 8. Number 2, we got a two-step equation. To get rid of plus 1, subtract 1 from each side. And so we have negative 7x equals 14. To get rid of multiplying by a negative 7, we'll divide by a negative 7. And so x is negative 2. You can check it by plugging it back in. You would replace the x with negative 2. Negative 7 times negative 2 is 14, and then 14 plus 1 is 15, so it does check. It does work. Here we're trying to write it in slope-intercept form. So we need to get the y by itself, and then we need our x term, and then our constant at the end. To get rid of that positive 6x, we'll subtract 6x from each side. We want the x term after the equal sign. And so instead of writing negative 20 minus 6x, we'll write negative 6x minus 20. Now to get the y by itself, or to get rid of the 2 that's being multiplied by it, divide everything by 2. And so we get y equal to negative 3x minus 10. We have it in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. This one is in slope-intercept form. The m is negative 4/1. Y-intercept is 1. If the slope isn't written as a fraction, write it as a fraction. So put it over 1. B is your beginning point, so begin at 1 on the y-axis, and then go down 4 to the right 1. If we had enough room, we could go up 4 to the right, or up 4 to the left 1, but that won't be a little bit off this grid. Negative slope, notice it's going downhill from left to right. Which lines are parallel? Well, parallel lines have the same slope. So let's find 2 points and do the slope. On A, we would rise 5, go to the left 3. So 5 over negative 3, or negative 5/3. For B, we could choose those 2 points. We would go down 2 to the right 1. We're calculating the slope of each line. For line C, we could start at 0, 2, and go to 2, negative 3. So we go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right 1, 2. So negative 5/2 is the slope of line C. And then line D, down 2 to the right 1 has a negative 2/1 slope. So the lines that are parallel are B and D. Those are the ones that are parallel to each other. The other ones do not have the same slope. For the first line here, we have a slope of negative 2/3 and a y-intercept of 3. So plot a point at 3, go down 2 to the right 3. If there are any other points that we could land on, we would go do that. For the second one, our slope is 1 as a fraction 1/1. Y-intercept is negative 2. So put a point at negative 2, go up 1 to the right 1. You want to go at least until those lines intersect. So we have the point 3, 1 as our solution. Scatter plot. As you go from left to right, if it's going uphill, it's a positive slope, downhill, it's a negative slope. So these go downhill from left to right, and so it's a negative correlation. calculate the distance on a number line between 2 points, you can count the distance between the points. Travel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could also do that by doing 3 minus a negative 2. We get 5, or negative 2 minus 3 and take the absolute value. So whichever way you work it, you should get 5 units for the distance from A to B. Now the distance between 2 points in the coordinate plane, we'll have to use the distance formula. Label your points x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. Plug them into this distance formula. First set of parentheses, we have x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Second set of parentheses, y sub 2 minus y sub 1. 0 minus a negative 7 is 0 plus 7, that's 7. And we'll square that. Negative 4 minus a negative 1 is negative 4 plus 1, that's negative 3. And we'll square that. So the distance is equal to the square root of 49 plus 9, square root of 58. If you think about a factor tree on 58, it is even. So 2 is a factor. So 2 times 29 gives us 58, but 29 and 2 are both prime, so that's as far as we can take it. So the exact value, square root 58. Then we'll go to our calculator for a decimal approximation. Calculator says 7.615, and it goes on from there. We're rounding it to the nearest tenth, so 6 is in the 10th place. This 1 would tell you to round down, and so we would just drop that. So we get approximately 7.6. So approximate value 7.6, exact value square root 58. Number 10, we're finding the midpoint between these 2 points. Label your points. Substitute into the midpoint formula. We'll have negative 1 plus negative 5 over 2. And 8 plus negative 2 over 2. So that's negative 6 over 2, comma 6 over 2. And so we get negative 3, 3. That's the midpoint between those 2 points. You could graph all 3 points and hopefully confirm that the midpoint is halfway between those points. Number 11, the negative square root of 81, negative 9. Number 12, square root of 36 is 6. Think about your index, especially when you do your exponents. 2 will go into 6 3 times, no remainder. 2 goes into 12 6 times, no remainder. Now when you go from an even square root to an odd square root in your final answer, you'll need absolute value around that variable in that exponent. We're trying to make this the positive square root of the whole thing. And so we need to make sure that even if x and y are negative, that this comes out to be the positive square root. 7 square roots of 11 minus 4 square roots of 11 is 3 square roots of 11. Much like 7x minus 4x is 3x. Or even 7x squared minus 4x squared is 3x squared. You need like radicals before you combine those. 14, trying to use the law of syllogism. The law of syllogism says that if you have an if P then Q and an if Q then R, you can put those together and say that we would have if P then R. So let's look at if you live in Birmingham, then you live in Alabama. So that's an if P then Q. The conclusion of this, you live in Alabama, matches up to the hypothesis of the next part. And so we can use the same letter there. We can say if Q then R. Now we can put those together to create a new conditional that would say, if you live in Birmingham, if you live in Birmingham, then you live in the United States. So that's the law of syllogism. 15, the converse. So the conditional says if P then Q. The converse will say if Q then P. Converse reverses the conditional. So we can say if the lines are parallel, then alternate interior angles are congruent. So again, a converse reverses the P and the Q from your conditional. If these lines are parallel, then the alternate exterior angles will be congruent. You can notice that they both appear to be obtuse. Got x's on both sides, you can combine those, or get the x's on one side by subtracting 10x from each side. Then you can add 9 and you get 14. And when you divide by 2, you get 7. By the way, if you plug this back in, each of these angles are 75, which is not the best picture here. It would make more sense if these were both these acute angles, or you could just change the expression to make more sense. But based on the picture, we have done it correctly, even though when you find the angles, the angles appear to be obtuse, but when you calculate them, we're not getting that. So sometimes early editions of a textbook will have mistakes like this that they just didn't think of or pick up on the first edition. So not the best problem there. All right, 17, you've got an external angle. The external angle to a triangle is equal to the sum of the two remote interior angles. So x is, oh, and I'll have a y here. Okay, so you may remember that the external angle is equal to the sum of the two remote interior angles. And so x is equal to 77. Now, if you don't realize that relationship, you can still figure this out. If you add the two that you know, subtract from 180, you get 103 for this angle here. And so then that would be a linear pair with the x, and so then you could say that the x will equal 180 minus 103, and so eventually you end up with 77, or 77 degrees for that angle. So we found x. All right, here we want to reflect it across the y-axis. So this is our y-axis. The original triangle is already graphed. We're just going to reflect it. So the C is 1 unit away, and so 1 unit on the other side would put us at 1, 3. If we reflect B across the y-axis, B is 3 units away, and so 3 units away on the other side, B right there. And then A is 2 units away, so A prime will be 2 units away as well. So we reflected that triangle across the y-axis. 19, we're translating it. This is translating along the vector -2, -3. So this x coordinate of the vector is basically telling you that you're going to the left 2 units. And then the y coordinate of the vector tells us that we're going down 3 units. So each of these points, we will take them to the left 2 units, down 3 units. To the left 2, down 3, and so we have our new point A prime. To the left 2, down 3, the new point B prime. And the same way, to the left 2, down 3, for C prime. And then we can connect all those points. Which of these is a rigid motion? Rigid motions keep the same shape and size as the original. So a reflection does that, rotation does that, dilation does not. Dilation will be an enlargement or a reduction. It's going to cause it to get either bigger or smaller. Translation, when I shift it right, left, or up or right or left, up or down, or a combination of those, it keeps the same shape and size. So all of these are rigid motions except for dilations. Dilations are not rigid motions. They cause a change in size. You think about dilating your eyes, if you've ever had to do that. They make your pupils really big. It changes the size of your pupil, at least temporarily. All right, so hopefully those made sense. So study for your 9-week test, 25% of your grade.